Brad, I asked you to step in place of Jesse this week. So we're going to talk about the drama at Turning Point USA, the ongoing civil war in the American right. This is so fun to watch. Like I'm very judgmental of people who watch reality TV, including my wife, and yet I am glued to the right wing infighting. It is better than reality TV.
I'm tiring of it a little bit,
I know.
honestly. I've been doing kind of breathless coverage of it on my YouTube channel and my podcast, particularly of Candace Owens and Tucker, and I've been tracking some of their wild theories and all of that. And it is getting a little old, but people are interested in it and they are very entertaining. You can say what you want about these people, but they are not boring.
No, this is definitely not our parents' Republicans. This is something else entirely. It's a much bitchier, almost much gayer, I would say, atmosphere on the American right, or at least more flamboyant. And then we're also going to talk a bit about what's going on at CBS News and 60 Minutes. Bari Weiss is. I do not think I've seen her getting this much shit since Ice Skater Gate years ago. She is
Oh, when she
really.
said immigrants get the job done, how quaint. Like,
I
that's
know.
what people were mad about.
Yes, yes. Okay, so let's start with the conservatives. So, I'm gonna ask you to sort of explain the drama at Turning Point USA's America Fest that has happened over the past week. But before we get into it, I think for people who haven't been really paying attention to the right, there's some backstory that it would help to sort of to understand. So, Brad, can you explain the main issues dividing the GOP right now?
Yeah, so the traditional GOP, at least in our lifetimes, really dates its ideology and movement back to Reagan. Reaganism, or what was called fusionism in conservative circles, combined three different belief systems. It combined economic libertarianism, so laissez-faire, free market economics and free trade, with social conservatism, right? So the kind of traditional heritage foundation, faith, family, religious liberty, opposition to abortion, to gay rights, and now trans rights and issues related to that, with a muscular foreign policy, with a hawkish foreign policy that you would associate with like the George Bush era. Now, I'm not going to use the word neocon, but that would get wrapped in sometimes in that. In 2016, along comes Donald Trump, who upsets the apple cart and basically kick some of those pieties and values to the curb. However, his first administration still ends up being staffed by a lot of people who are basically still Reaganites. And a lot of the policies were still more or less in line with that, with a few notable exceptions, like his first term tariffs. But a lot of it was corporate tax cuts, deregulation, putting Federalist Society judges. It was more of, on the policy, it was more of a normal Republican administration.
Yeah.
After January 6th, after the election denial, the Capitol riot, whatever you want to call it, all of that, the kind of last strongholds of that group all jumped ship. Mike Pence, those types really did jump off. And then what you were left with was kind of this um, jump ball for the future of the Republican Party. And at that time, Trump kind of looked dead in the water, but he obviously was not. And he made this extraordinary comeback.
He
And so
floats.
he he's Teflon Don for sure. You can say that. But what you then have is kind of a jump ball for the future of the party. And there's some people who are visionaries in it that are still attached somewhat to those old values. Ben Shapiro would be a good example. He is, in general terms, in line with uh, economic libertarianism, social conservatism, and hawkish foreign policy. Then there's people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, who are a combination of a more isolationist or anti-interventionist sentiment, along with a more honestly left wing in the traditional sense economic policy. They're
Yes.
more interested in nationalism, populism, these kinds of ideas. And then also it maps onto sort of an institutionalist versus a new media. Or are you somebody who more or less believes in the way things used to work and in traditional sources of information? Or are you somebody who, in Candace Owens' words, thinks everyone is fake, everything is fake and gay, right?
Right.
And so those are the big picture divides here. And the current Trump coalition kind of papered over the divides to win the election. And then now we're figuring out what the actual direction is. Because then you have some figures who have rode the fence, like JD Vance.
Right.
And where will they go?
And one of the major schisms among this coalition, or what is left of a coalition, is over Israel.
Mhm.
Yeah. So explain that a little bit.
Well, the traditional position, conservative position, is pro-Israel, right?
Right.
It is part of a muscular foreign policy, is part of America's role in the world, and spreading democracy and believing in Western civilization and Judeo-Christian values. And then somebody said, "So we're calling a couch a fence now." JD Vance did not, in fact, do anything with any couches. I'm pretty sure that is fake news, but
Dry humping is not intercourse, folks. It's not.
so yes, and then it maps onto Israel in the sense that these new nationalist or really just off the reservation figures like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, they've
Right.
started more by just questioning Israel. They were all one time big supporters, and as the war in Gaza turned bloody and casualties were even worse, and all these horrific stories and videos filled people's feeds, they broke. And obviously Ben Shapiro in the traditional kind of GOP perspective did not and stand steadfast. And then of course it does become mapped onto Israel versus anti-Israel, but also anti-Semitism. And where is the line there? Because sometimes those two bleed into each other
Right.
back and forth,
Right.
obviously.
Right. And we've talked on the show about Candace Owens. I think there's no doubt that she is anti-Semitic. She's maybe not as anti-Semitic as like Myron Gaines. We've also talked about him on the show. He does the. Do you know what his podcast?
Yeah, of course. I know all about
Yeah.
him. Myron Gaines is his fake name that he changed it to, of course. His real name is something very Muslim sounding, I believe, that he
Yeah.
changed to rebrand. But
Yeah.
yes, so you're right. She is not so blatant like a Nick Fuentes or
She's
like
getting
a
there.
Myron. She won't rant and say like Jews suck, Jews do this, Jews do this. But she is going kind of mask off. Like her latest rant about Ben Shapiro, she says your people are contract lords. Like
Right.
it's not getting very subtle anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. So Myron Gaines, for people who haven't heard of him, so I can't remember what he is
Fresh and
American.
Fit podcast in
Fresh.
Miami, baby.
Yeah. So he was at this Trump USA America Fest wearing, did you see this shirt that he was wearing?
Yeah, what it was something anti-Semitic. It was about
He
the
had
cookies.
it was a picture of like like a knockoff Cookie Monster with cookies in an oven. It had some text on, I don't remember what it was, but it was a reference to Nick Fuentes. Years ago, he went on this riff about basically saying, the number of people killed in the Holocaust, of Jews killed in the Holocaust had been wildly overestimated, and he used this metaphor about cookies in the oven. So, "Oh, let them cook." Someone says, "Let them cook." What the shirt said. So these are
He's just a troll.
He's a troll. But he's also like very hard and anti-Semite. Candace Owens is friendly with him. So this leads us all to the Turning Point USA America Fest, which happened this week. Several of those people were there. Ben Shapiro was there. I don't think Candace was there. Um,
No.
no, she was not there. And that has something to do with her battle with Erica Kirk. So can you explain that before we get into
Right.
the
So obviously Charlie Kirk was killed in September, and then we saw things diverge into two directions. There's kind of a side that more or less believes the official story of what happened. Count me in that camp. Call me crazy. That Tyler Robinson was a disturbed young man who had a transgender identifying lover, became radicalized, thought Charlie Kirk was a hateful person, and decided to take violent action and went up there and shot him in this like crazy shot. And that he died from that, and that it's a horrific political attack. It's part of a broader pattern of of rising political violence in America, most recently among, I think, far left extremists, but certainly there's lots to go across the board. Um, and then there's the narrative that this is something deeper and that this is some kind of conspiracy or cover up that was pushed by Tucker, asking by Candace Owens. And it's gotten more and more severe to the point where this might sound absurd, but this is what she says. She has suggested repeatedly that the decision was made to kill Charlie Kirk by insiders at Turning Point USA, by people involved with the French government, and
Mhm.
the Egyptian government is involved with Egyptian planes that she claims, and she's very off with her data analysis about, we're tracking Erica Kirk, and also that this involves the Trump administration. They are in on it, and it's all part of a web of lies and deceit and conspiracy and cover up. And to be fair, I mean, there's certainly some unusual things about this shooting. I'm not sure that they actually are unanswerable or unexplainable, but there's certainly some oddities, and I don't think the way that the Trump administration, particularly Kash Patel, handled the aftermath, it wasn't exactly a professional masterclass.
That probably
Um,
said more about Kash Patel than the actual events of the day.
but that's where we're at. And so she has become increasingly certain that Turning Point, she called it a godforsaken institution. She turned totally against it, suggested they killed Charlie Kirk. And it's become a dividing line. Are you on her conspiracy train? And do you believe there's more to this story and that Charlie Kirk was betrayed? Or do you not believe that? And it's essentially everybody is being forced to choose what side they are on. And Ben Shapiro very forcefully condemned her at the Turning Point conference. Tucker Carlson refused to and instead took shots back at Ben Shapiro. And then Megyn Kelly, who is another conservative commentator and who initially rode the fence here. She was friends with all of these people. She had all of these people on her show, and she was taking this approach of like, she claimed to have been working behind the scenes to try to resolve this, to try to get people to have conversations. But she has now been essentially forced to and decided to take the side of Candace and Tucker. And so you
Yeah.
have that side versus Ben Shapiro and people and others. And it's really all become a dividing line.
So what do you make of Megyn Kelly's turn? This one sort of surprised me because the last time I was on her show, which I assume will be the last time I will be on her show, she had Jesse and I on to talk about trans stuff, of course, but we ended up somehow talking about Israel. And I used the word slaughter. I said something about Israel slaughtering Palestinians. And that thing that Trump said about blood coming out of her, whatever, I sort of had a flash in that moment of what he was talking about because the fact that I used that term was extremely offensive to her. She was a steadfast supporter of Israel, and this was probably last year. It was not that long ago. And now, she has allied herself with two of the most prominent Tucker Carlson says that he's not an anti-Semite, that he as a Christian, he judges everybody. But then you listen to his rhetoric and it's like he had this like tongue bath with Nick Fuentes. He is certainly towing the line, if not crossing it. And Megyn Kelly too seems to be doing the same thing. And so I'm sort of asking you to psychoanalyze her here. My take on this is that Kelly really fucking hates to be told what to do. And that when people say to her, you need to disavow Candace Owens, her immediate reaction is to say, fuck you, no. I will embrace Candace Owens because you have demanded this of me and I refuse to be told what to do. What's your take on that on her?
I think that is a piece of it. Another portion of this is all of this is a business. All of this
True.
is essentially a popularity contest.
Here am
It
I
is,
thinking that this is all about people's deeply held values. You were correct. This is also a business.
um, and there's something incredibly intoxicating about being as successful as Megyn Kelly has been with her show and with her, obviously she left NBC, I believe it was, and in kind of it was a failure. They signed her on this big money contract. She got canceled for dumb reasons, but she wasn't performing well. And but what she's been massively successful with her show on Sirius XM and YouTube. Sometimes I appreciate some of the work that she does. I don't think it's terrible. I think she's in some ways still a serious and interesting person. But once you're bringing in millions of eyeballs like that, it becomes very, very hard to watch that fade. And what you can say about Tucker and Candace that they have going for them is rabid support, rabid fan base. Anything where um, Candace uploads like her recount of her meeting with Erica Kirk, where she is investigating her conspiracies. Within 3 hours, it had been streamed over 2 million times on YouTube. Like the numbers are astronomical. So I think a portion of this, and whether this is conscious or unconscious, I don't know, is Megyn wanting to align herself with the audience that
Right.
supports Candace and Tucker, where
Right.
someone like Ben Shapiro is not irrelevant, but is certainly his star has faded in terms of
Mhm.
popularity and support. And so he doesn't bring the same clout. Another piece of it, and this is where I have some sympathy, though I don't ultimately follow them. When Megyn did start to question Israel a little bit, she was pretty viciously attacked by kind of the pro-Israel side. They have this problem in that camp where if you start to deviate, if you're a longtime ally and supporter, but you say one thing or you start to deviate a little bit, they pounce on you. And she really she was pounced upon for just making a couple of criticisms or saying that Israel needed to wrap its war up or something like that. And
Mhm.
I think that really rubbed her the wrong way and may have pushed her to the opposite side, to the other extreme. And then a lot of it then becomes a self reinforcing prophecy, right? Because they keep calling you anti-Semitic. You know you're not anti-Semitic in your heart, so then you go talk to the other people who are being called anti-Semitic, and you assume they must not be either,
Right.
but some of them actually are.
Right.
So
Right.
it's all kind of chain reaction.
So, in terms of the upcoming conservative, I mean, I assume that Turning Point USA is an event that this America Fest, that this is an event that is bringing in lots of Gen Z, a lot of younger folks, sort of the next wave of Republican party members and leaders. Do you have a sense of where they fall? I mean, I listened to Ben Shapiro's talk, and he got some applause lines, like, when he said that believing Candace Owens was retarded, like, they liked that he said the word retarded, but this was not like a barn burner of a speech, which actually kinda concerns me because when it comes to these people, I do think that Ben Shapiro, as much as I might disagree with him on lots of policy issues, including Israel in some ways, he's not fucking crazy,
No,
unlike
I feel similarly in that I have lots of disagreements with Ben Shapiro. But I still have some respect for him as a commentator, and he's still fundamentally dealing in the world of reality. Like
Yeah,
if you watch an
yeah,
episode of the Ben Shapiro podcast and he's talking about current events, he might get certain things wrong or present them in a very biased way, but he's not like manifestly discussing things that aren't happening in the
yeah,
way that someone like Candace Owens genuinely is. Um, and but at the same time, though, I do think there's a little bit of a pass that he's getting right now. People are like, bravo for him for standing up for what's right. There's maybe not enough accountability for the role he played in creating Candace Owens
right, but yeah,
because
she worked at the Daily Caller until
Daily Wire,
I'm sorry, Daily Wire, until last year, the year before he fired her.
yeah. And more importantly, she's always been crazy. She's
Yeah,
definitely gotten crazier, but she has always been conspiracy minded. She's
yes,
always been willing to demonize groups of people. Just she originally did it with black people at great lengths.
which
She's
Republicans loved.
so I get a little frustrated because I agree that Candace, what she's doing is unacceptable and unconscionable, but it does seem like Ben Shapiro really only cared once she started doing it about the Jews. And
Right,
when she was peddling anti vax misinformation on her show on Daily Wire, he had no problem with it. She made massive factual errors in the documentaries she did about vaccines on Daily Wire. When she was like just demonizing black people in a way. And I agree, listen, I agree with a lot of the criticisms of BLM and racial activists and DEI and all of that, but she went
right,
beyond that and
right,
kind of played for years the role of the black person, like crapping on black people. Um, he never really cared about any of that. And he was willing to prop it up and profit off of it for a time. But then when it became an Israel and Jewish thing, that was like a bridge too far for him. And I do agree that with his criticisms entirely, but I do bristle at that a little bit, that he has through the Daily Wire that he found it. I don't know how much control he actually has over it. Um, but through that he founded, he has contributed to the degradation of political discourse on the
For
right.
sure.
But and somebody says she was already a public figure by the time that Ben hired her. He didn't create her, but he helped grow her. He did.
Yeah.
So he helped her hit the next level for sure. And
Yeah.
the Daily Wire has done that. They've uplifted a lot of people who are really he's never really had any problem with how openly hateful Matt Walsh is towards other groups of
Mhm.
people. Matt Walsh doesn't do that about Jewish people.
Not
If
yet.
he did, then maybe that would be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, at the same time, there's also been it seems like heritage is coming undone. Can you explain what's going on there?
Well, it's maybe a nerdier version of a similar thing, and it's actually directly related because Tucker Carlson was at the heart of it. So the president of Heritage is somebody named Kevin Roberts, who used to be the president of the Texas Public Policy Foundation and is more in this nationalist school of conservatism. And he has steered the Heritage Foundation in a way that is different. Heritage was like the North Star for fusionism. You were going to get principled free market takes, traditional hardcore social conservatism, and support for muscular foreign policy. That is what they've stood for a very, very long time. But he came in as the president a few years ago and decided that his view for heritage involved more of a meeting the moment or reading the room, when the debate is more actually that like a think tank isn't supposed to be that. A think tank is supposed to be like a North Star that says what we believe in. And then even if it's not popular at the moment, that's what we believe in still. He has tried to like make heritage relevant by moving to where the Republican center of gravity was, including by doing a about face on their things like opposition to antitrust policy because they were free market, so they didn't want the government breaking up companies. Well, he just basically reversed decades long standing positions there. He fired a bunch of more free market traditional experts or pushed them out and brought in new people who have this different ideology. And it all came to a boiling point after Tucker did that tongue bath with Nick Fuentes, who is just, an openly hateful, essentially neo-Nazi figure. Although we could talk about why he's popular, and he certainly is funny and charismatic and
Right.
all of these things. Um, so I'm not even trying to do him short thrift, but he's
And
extremely hateful.
yeah, he is. He's also somehow less conspiratorial than Candace Owens. He like
Yes,
he
he is, and but that's a whole tangent. But after Tucker did this interview with him, Kevin Roberts essentially did a video saying we won't because Heritage had really been like this with Tucker. Sponsored his podcast, hosted him at events, like they were very much hand in hand. And he put out a video saying like we won't condemn Tucker. We believe in having conversations or something. And it prompted this massive meltdown basically inside Heritage and outside of Heritage, saying like what has it become? The Heritage of old would never have been mealy mouthed to condemn Hitler lovers and Stalin apologists and all these things. And so they had this fractious town hall that was leaked and recorded, and the whole thing has descended into chaos. And now people are leaving, but others are staying. And he appears to have held on through the storm. Kevin Robertson is writing it out.
and Mike Pence, he has started a new heritage competitor or something like this.
It's been around for a few years. I could try to find the name, but I think it's like Advancing American Freedom or something. Mike Pence Freedom Group. But yeah, he's essentially he has Advancing American Freedom is the name of
Okay.
it. Mike Pence is still, of course, the former vice president. He's still kind of wedded to that old fusionistic view of social conservatism, muscular foreign policy, and laissez-faire economics. So he's increasingly broken with Trump and with this new Republican Party, and he is trying to rebuild a new center of gravity. And he's hired some of these experts away. There will always be institutional and donor support for that old school perspective.
Yeah.
Um, whether it's really able to compete with this new Republican Party, I'm skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you predict for the future of the GOP? I mean, it seems to me that in part this is just a demographics issue, and we have a wave of older baby boomers who are now in their 70s and 80s, the Reaganites, and they're going to die soon. And what comes next is the Groypers, is Candace Owens fans, is whatever's happening at Turning Point USA. Although I guess I should say, I mean, Turning Point USA, they didn't invite Candace Owens for obvious reasons.
Well, she has accused them of murder,
Right, right. But
essentially.
to their credit. So what do you think comes next?
So I don't think full blown Groyperism will become the total mainstream. Now, what I think is that you will have a something adjacent to that, especially in the form of a man named JD Vance,
Right.
who I think will essentially adopt enough of that to
Mhm.
earn those people's support, but will maintain a distance and a veneer from like a level of distance from the open hatred and bigotry and conspiracy, but he also won't condemn it or will
Yeah,
only sparingly condemn it. And
right.
so he'll play a kind of game. And what I think you will have is a face for the Republican Party that is big enough that it largely appeals and panders to this new movement and wing, but doesn't entirely abandon a more normal vibe and face because they do have to appeal to, when general elections come around, a broader American public. But
Yeah.
yes, I would expect to see Republicans kind of like in the Tea Party era, they were tripping over each other to in the primaries to prove how truly libertarian they were, right? Like how much I um how much you want to abolish the Federal Reserve? Well, I want to abolish the Treasury Department entirely. It's like
Right.
I think now you're going to see, oh, you want to deport all the illegals? Well, I want a complete immigration moratorium, except from South Africa and our
Right.
refugees who share our culture, right?
Right.
Like, so I think you will see this rise, but ultimately electoral politics will keep it in check somewhat in terms of
Yeah.
the leaders of the party and the candidates, because that's never going to play with just like normies who are disengaged. They're going to be like,
Right.
wait, what?
Right. Well, the Dems made such a mistake. I mean, some of the front runners during the awakening, I always said, like, the mistakes that people like Elizabeth Warren made were hiring advisors who were too young and online, and they got a skewed perspective because they were spending too much time on Twitter. They got a skewed perspective on what the electorate wants, and they just lost vast swaths of people because they turned too far left on mostly on these social issues. And I wonder if the same thing is happening on the right. Frankly, I hope the same thing is happening on
I
the right
hope.
because yeah.
And there's one example that makes me think it may be. There's a guy named James Fishback who is running for the governor of Florida in the Republican primary. And
Mhm,
he has decided to become the Groyper candidate. Like he is
mhm,
literally openly appealing to the Groypers. He is enlisting the influencers. He is trying to get the Nick Fuentes endorsement. He's like adopting their terms and really saying stuff and posting videos that are almost copy and pasted from like Groyper talking points. And last poll I saw had him at about 2% in the
I
Republican
cannot
primary.
people like, being amused by Nick Fuentes is one thing. I am amused by Nick Fuentes. I don't watch his
As am I.
show, but I do watch the clips because he is funny. I hate to say it, but he's funny, and he's, like, weirdly charming, especially when he is shitting on his own audience, which is the best part of his show, is when he's being mean to his followers. But I cannot imagine that the Groyper army, whatever it is big enough to get anybody elected, concentrated enough to get
Mm,
anybody elected.
no, and I just we'll have to see how much all of this translates because
Yeah.
like Byron Donalds is the front runner and is still pro-Israel and is still more more of a polished mega
Right.
Republican, semi-normal. I don't
That
know.
I would imagine the average voter in Florida is probably old.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a particularly weak state to try to do that in, but sure. And also the problem is how many of these young people who will like and repost hardcore X posts actually vote in
Right,
primaries.
right,
There's an age gap there as well. But
right.
I think some people do, and I've had conversations or even where disagreements with some people who want to dismiss the phenomenon and say, like, oh, this is just online. No, I'm sorry. There are tens of millions of
Yeah,
people in this country genuinely tuning in to deranged conspiracies and hate filled pundits who are spewing bile. That is a real problem, and it's going to have a corrosive impact on American politics, even if it doesn't result in huge electoral implications.
yeah.
But it's still a big deal, actually, that can't millions of people are still watching Candace, no matter how crazy she gets.
What do you think is the right way to handle this problem? I assume that you're not in favor of deplatforming her, Nick Fuentes, or whoever.
No, I'm not. I don't know. I don't know that I have a good answer to that question because I don't want them taken down, but ultimately, like, the media market is clearly not functioning well. But the problem is essentially on the demand side. Like, the problem is the people. The markets are just giving the people what they want. So I don't view the market as the problem. I view what the people want as the problem.
Right.
They
I
don't
mean,
like when Candace makes a huge error and it is pointed out by by critics who their videos get millions of views. People don't stop watching. They
right,
just keep watching.
right,
Years ago, if you botched a story terribly and didn't ap- deal with it or apologize, people would lose trust in you. They might
right,
cancel their newspaper subscription. They might stop watching your show. Now it seems that they're impervious to this kind of
right,
thing. Even, for example, on the Charlie Kirk thing, Candace had this CNN interview where one of the claims Candace has made is that the FBI, the local authorities, and the Utah police all conspired to make fake text messages framing Tyler Robinson. But Candace believed they were Discord messages. And in the interview with the CNN reporter, the reporter was like, no, they're text messages. In the indictment, it clearly says SMS text message. She's like, no, my understanding is they're Discord messages. Discord is a messaging app. And that Discord said they don't exist. And you flash to the indictment, which I have read. Um, they are text messages. So she like makes a very foundational error to a
right,
key part of her theory that suggests just an ignorance of even the topic she is monetizing and making God knows how many millions of dollars from. And people, her audience fundamentally doesn't care. And I don't know what we do with that. I think what will probably have to happen in her case is I think lawsuits may bring her down in the end. I believe that this meeting, this is a theory, but I believe the meeting she had with Erica Kirk may have been one to formally put her on notice. They presented her with information. They said, listen, now you know this. If you continue, we will have you demonstrating actual disregard for the truth in a court case. Maybe that is because it's like, why would Erica Kirk meet with this person who
right.
has essentially accused everyone around her of betraying her husband and killing them in this crazy conspiracy, who hadn't even been in their lives for years, by the way. But so I think maybe lawsuits, like that's what happened with Tucker at Fox, right? He went down because of the lawsuit. Maybe it's that. And then maybe there is just a slow drop off over time as people get tired of the crazy. I don't know. But I'm sure I've been honestly startled by the extent to which she has proved untouchable.
One funny thing about Candace is she has ended up now defending the leftist the leftist with the trans girlfriend, or as Ben Shapiro called Tyler Robinson, the gay trans loving furry. Like that's how far down the rabbit hole she is that she's now defending the assassin. How much do you think this is people watching Candace because they like the train wreck rather than they are watching Candace because they believe Candace?
It's some of it is that, but I think claiming that that's like the majority is cope. Every video that I do criticizing or debunking Candace Owens, I am flooded with comments from her supporters and fans who say,
Mhm.
"No, you don't get it. No, you don't understand. Stop
Yeah.
just clip farming her. You don't. You need to watch the full episodes." And I do watch the full
Yeah.
episodes. Um,
Have you lost subscribers because you've been going after the right more?
um, I don't know. I haven't lost subscribers overall. Certain videos, like if I criticize Candace on that video, I'll be like down 100 or whatever. But my channel growth hasn't slowed. But it's more so a lot of people don't unsubscribe, they just stop watching you. So YouTube, a lot of people don't actually formally unsubscribe to your page. Yeah, my views are down over the last month or two, but that's also just it also is just cyclical. I guess the short answer is I don't really care. Like I'm gonna just talk about the things I want to talk about and give my take on them. I'm still making enough to pay my bills. Beyond that, I don't really care. So I'm not
Yeah.
in the threshold where you're making millions of dollars anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, I want to talk about CBS, but before we get there, one more Republican figure who I'm fascinated by, and that is Marjorie Taylor Greene. What is your take on her?
Um, well, it's wild because years ago she was the crazy one, right?
Yes.
And the others, like Nancy Mace, who were entering Congress, were the normal moderates, and now they've sort of changed, but not exactly. It's really proven to be an unexpected development. Marjorie, why the thing I can't understand is why she's quitting Congress because I think there may be have been a conversation where, and this happens in politics, I'm sure you know, they found something on her and they say, listen, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. We're sick of your shit. Um, because she's pissed off a lot of people, powerful people. She's pissed off Mike Johnson, the speaker, and others with her antics. They say, we found this. You can get out or this can come out. And I think in that is also a freedom that has in that is also a freedom to tell the truth in that some of the things she's saying now are things she's clearly known for years about like this is when she talks about his Rob Reiner Trump's Rob Reiner tweets being unpresidential and like disappointing rhetoric like no shit
Yeah.
duh yeah
Right.
I agree but however I've seen a number of Republicans who it's like suddenly now that they're leaving government or that they are Trump's mad at them anyway for some other reason are speaking out against this stuff. But you know they knew that a year ago. They knew that during his first presidency and they just didn't say anything. So I think you get like a freedom from leaving politics. And as to why she's actually leaving, I don't know the answer, but I find it perplexing because people rarely choose to do that,
Right.
especially to resign. Did she resign early?
Yeah, she
She's
left.
not even serving out her term. That's particularly unusual.
Yes, I find that very strange. Sorry, my battery is now dying. Okay, let me know if you guys. I'm gonna have to hold this. Um, okay, let's talk about CBS News. So people probably know what is going on over at 60 Minutes, but for anybody who has somehow missed this, Brad, will you give us the little TLDR?
Yeah, so at the start of the Trump presidency, one of the most controversial things he did was send illegal immigrants without due process to this really dystopian terrorism detention center in El Salvador called CCOT. And it proved to be a massive scandal. Some of them have gotten out. Some of them became household names, Kilmar Abrigo Garcia, others. Um, anyway, since Bari took over CBS and was put in place as part of her mission to, I think, right the ship or correct its, in my view, pretty clear liberal bias and kind of mismanagement over the years, she blocked or paused, unclear exactly, the publication of a CBS segment that was exclusively dedicated to this, to reporting on the torturous conditions and horrible experiences that immigrants faced in CCOT. And it led to this big media panic and meltdown that she's like turning CBS into state propaganda and not allowing Trump criticism. And then a bunch of internal leaks came out where it's like the reporter that put together this story gave her side, and she seemed to have some legit complaints. Like she said that Bari hadn't met with her to explain this decision. Bari put out several statements explaining things that were wrong with this that she wanted to improve. Some of that seemed genuinely reasonable to me. However, having it be cleared, set to air, promotions run, and then yanked at the last second is clearly at least a big mess up and like doesn't go over well.
Yeah, so the optics here are not good, and it is hard to explain how much this has taken over Twitter, or at least my Twitter feed. It is 100% this story. Nothing else is even registering right now because my feed is all media stuff, and there's a, uh, Bari Weiss derangement syndrome is real. I think that's part of what is going on. I don't think that's entirely what is going on. But the theory that you see floating around is that this is an attempt to, pacify the Trump administration while the Ellison family is trying, who are Barry's bosses, they own Paramount, which owns CBS, while they are trying to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery, and they have a new interest in this TikTok and like the American takeover of TikTok. So that's the conspiracy theory, that this is all, somewhere in a dark room, Barry met with the Ellisons and they were like, yanked this piece. This will be the one. Trump doesn't want this to get out on 60 Minutes. And I'll tell you why I find that hard to believe. So, first of all, here's my disclosure. I think everybody knows this, but I'm going to say it again. So, I'm friends with Bari Weiss. I have done work for the Free Press. I'm friends with Nellie. I'm friends with Susie. And because of that, I have some insight into how things have worked at the Free Press. And so Barry coming in at the last minute and giving directions and even demands on a story is not unusual. So this is something that happens, that has happened. And so when I saw this, I was not particularly surprised. The thing is, when you do this, when a manager does this, particularly an executive does this, you're gonna really piss off the reporters, the producers, everybody involved in the story, because people put a lot of work into their stories. And then when the boss comes in and says, "No, I don't like this," you're gonna get really pissed off. And the Free Press was staffed with people who mostly believed in the mission and mostly care about Barry. And so you wouldn't see a lot of leaks coming out of the Free Press when something like this would happen. But CBS News is an entirely different story. Barry lost the newsroom, as they say, before she even had the newsroom. And so this was, I think, a very serious misstep on her part, but I don't think that it was a conspiracy. And part of the reason I don't think that is because the actual episode, in another giant fuck up, the actual episode went out on
Yep.
Canadian broadcast. And then it was immediately posted on Twitter. Yasher Ali, he posted on his Substack. So I watched the original CBS, or the original 60 Minutes episode yesterday. And contrary to what you will read on Twitter, this was not a Pulitzer-winning segment. You can see from the memo that leaks that it was like Barry's feedback on the episode. I thought her feedback was correct. Like the segment was fine. It wasn't good. Parts of it were good. Like there
Did
was
a lot that was new, and it was, of course, incredibly one-sided.
You're right. The bigger issue to me was, so there was interviews with two guys who were detainees at this facility. That part was fine. It was effective. It's a terrible story. I don't think Barry is in favor of this either. She's not. She's not an unethical person. I think she realizes that this is bad, and the Free Press didn't criticize Trump nearly as much as I would like, but they have not been silent on Trump. But the problem that I saw with the episode was that in the middle of it, they basically cut to Human Rights Watch, which was this organization that basically made reports on how devastating this facility was. But the then they go to this panel of Berkeley students who were like data analysts, and they had this long segment where like these students were explaining like how they use like video footage to like confirm stories about CCOT. And it was, why? Like, this is completely irrelevant to the story. She was right when she said it didn't push the story forward. Now, should that be a reason to yank a story off the air? No, I don't think so.
I
But
think so. The one thing I think, though, is that this was an avoidable error somewhat for Bari that she came in at the
Yeah,
last second. And from the
totally.
reading I've done, she had the opportunity to review this
Yes.
before.
Yes.
And well, one thing I will say is I see all this panic in media about like seed corporate censorship, state propaganda. If they air the thing anyway with additional context and information and a perspective from the Trump administration, that's better. I mean, it was still handled poorly, but like, what's the problem? They even said this will air. Maybe they're not killing the story.
Right. So I think this was a bad management issue more than a conspiracy or even a political issue. I think what Bari wanted, and I'm speculating here, I have not talked to her or anyone at CBS News, but I think that what she wanted was viral content. She wanted an interview to go viral. She needs to make up for like the Erica Kirk thing didn't do very well. And this segment was not gonna be it at all. An
It didn't
interview
add a
with
lot.
no,
We
an
know
interview with
this.
Stephen Miller might have done it. So I think this was a a real misstep, a fuck up, but not a conspiracy. And the fact that so there's been some reporting out of Axios that was pretty interesting on this. So the other thing that people should know is that the reporter who did this story has a bit of a history, right? So she
Hmm.
had. So do you want to explain this, Brad?
I'll let you because you probably have the details more fresh of mind. But she did this reporter did Ron DeSantis incredibly dirty a few years ago with
Yeah.
very deceptive framing and coverage of something he said.
Yeah, her name is Sharon Alfonsi, and she wrote this like scathing internal memo about Barry. It had like not just double, but like triple spaces after the periods. It was truly, truly hilarious. I mean, truly, truly terrible. But she did this in 2001. She did this segment on the DeSantis administration contracting with the grocery chain Publix to put out COVID vaccines, to be like an early vaccine site. And she fucked this up. Like they fucked this up. Like they deceptively interviewed a press conference with DeSantis to the point where even the Society for Professional Journalists came out and made a statement about this. So there's added scrutiny on her already. And so to me, I think Barry did screw up here for sure, but like as a management issue, not as a we're trying to pacify Trump, because this story wouldn't be the thing that would kill a Time Warner deal anyway. It wouldn't have. It didn't go like people should go and actually watch the CB, like you can find it. Go watch the segment. This would not have done it. It was
See,
a
this is fueling though my libertarian streak in that I don't really believe for something like a media company you should have to get government approval for mergers, and when you do, it puts this incredibly powerful tool in the government's hands that then you have all this furry curry favor currying.
right. Right.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very dangerous tool when they have to go to Washington and suck up to the masters of DC to get their massive merger approved. I think they should just be able to buy and sell media properties. We're not talking about like the only water company in town or something that might actually need monopoly regulation.
Well, I mean, the sort of the hilarious irony of this is that by Streisanding this to high hell, Trump, I'm sure, has now heard of this. He probably believes the conspiracy theories that Barry and the Ellisons did this to appease him, and it will probably work. So,
Maybe.
even
I
if
one
this,
thing I am curious about is the question of whether the original story was that the White House declined to do on-camera
yeah,
interviews for this,
yes.
but they
Sorry.
did apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong, I read they did send responses to questions and comments that simply weren't included.
All
I
right,
find
that
that
was
to be
yes.
dubious.
Okay,
Highly
so
dubious. What?
this was the Axios reporting that was
Yeah.
important. Was that in the original segment, Sharon Alfonsi says we reached out to the White House for comment and they didn't comment. And Axios got I don't know how they got this, but Axios got the found out somehow that according to them, the White House, the Homeland Security, whoever did actually comment, and that was left out of the story. So that's another reason to
If
be
that's true, that's a really big issue.
right, right. And so this reporter also with a history of fuck not that look, everybody makes fuck ups in the media, for sure, but there's going to be added scrutiny if you have that sort of thing in your past.
I do find this story interesting because it's taken over my Twitter timeline as well. I did cover it on my show yesterday. Um, it's one of those things though that I really think the media and political class finds so fascinating and normal Americans could not give less of a shit about.
Right.
And I get this yeah, I get this. And obviously, my comment section is not real life, or like my algorithm is not real life. But I do, because I publish my segments on YouTube, I do see which ones do well and which ones flop. And I was expecting and proven correct that there would not be much engagement or interest in my discussion of this topic. I
Interesting.
think journalists really care about
Yes.
what's going on inside 60 Minutes.
Right.
I'm visiting my partner's family here in Michigan. I could ask them, have you heard about what's going on with 60 Minutes? And they have no idea. Now, maybe
This is
something like Nicki Minaj going
yeah,
MAGA, they might know
yeah.
about, but they don't give a shit about 60 Minutes. This is media insider stuff.
This is the difference between your family and my family is my parents brought it up to me at lunch yesterday.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Either way, I mean, the thing is also we'll be able to watch. Presumably, the final product will go on air, so you can watch the Canadian version and the delayed American version and just compare the two. But
I
I do
I
think
I
go ahead.
I imagine the version that airs will be better, but it was clearly botched in how she handled it.
Totally, totally, no question. This was like a management fuck up, for sure. But it's also a management like a thing that Barry has done in the past. And my guess is that she thought like this is going to be no big deal because I would do this at the Free Press, and
Well,
I
and
got
it's
what I
hard
wanted.
because she is essentially running a hostile operation where like no one wants to
Yes,
give her the benefit of the doubt. No, everyone is going to look to undercut her and leak at every like a sieve at every turn. I don't envy her, and
no,
I don't know. I would not be excited about such a project myself.
no. I would have sold the company, taken the money, and run. I would not. I would not have taken this job whatsoever. But I think Barry and I have different ideas about
At least either
what a
way,
good
she
life
gets to
is.
keep the money. So
Yeah, seriously, seriously. All right, we have a few more minutes. My phone is also on 12%. So if anybody has any questions, um, uh, give it to us now. I'll check the page as well. Okay, someone asked about heritage. We covered that. Um, uh, can someone tell me what the stated purpose was of AmFest? It seemed like a campaign rally, but I don't know if that's what it was supposed to be. Brad,
I think it's just their annual conference that they do, Turning Point.
make money.
Well, yeah, to fundraise for the organization, but also just to like they want to be the staging ground for the conservative movement.
Yeah,
And everyone with JD Vance was there. Like
yeah,
they are.
yeah.
You can't take that away from them.
All right, someone wants you to talk a bit more about Nicki Minaj.
Oh,
What
well,
happened?
so here's my thing that pisses me off. I'm old enough to remember when conservatives were all about shut up and dribble. And I agreed with them, right? That celebrities talking about politics is annoying, then they don't really know anything, and we should not look to them as luminaries. And I generally agree with that. I don't really care whether Nicki Minaj goes MAGA or not. I don't value her political insight one way or the other. But
If it had been Cardi B, like Ben Shapiro followed by Cardi B, that would have been amazing.
But what I will say about it is that it pisses me off how Republicans always say, "Oh, we don't care what celebrities think. Shut up and dribble."
Yeah.
And then the second a celebrity, even yes, a D-list celebrity, not that Nicki Minaj is D-list, but in other cases, even hints at being Republican, they're like, "Oh my God, we love you, Queen. Please come."
Mhm.
It's just very hypocritical. I don't care. It was awkward how she said assassin about JD Vance, but she's
Wait, so
called
explain that. Explain that.
so Cardi B was no Nicki Minaj was on stage at the Turning Point conference with Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, and they're talking about JD Vance and Nicki Minaj is hyping up JD Vance and calls him an assassin, like saying he's a
Mhm.
stone cold killer, like he
Bad
wants to
use of words.
he'll destroy you in a debate. And then there's just this awkward 10 seconds of silence. She goes, "Oh no." And Erica goes, "No, don't worry. I've heard all sorts of stuff." But it was just unfortunate word choice. I don't know. But of course, I like Candace Owens is probably going to clip that up and play her on a show and be like, "See, they're admitting it. Freudian slip."
Okay, someone says, "What does it take for Katie to believe that Bari is not just an incompetent manager? It is, and instead, oh, I just lost it. Something about political experience and knowing people who have worked for her and do work for her, and not relying on people who actually don't know anything about the situation on Twitter, and conversations I've had with people who are much closer to the situation than I am. So that's that's what it would take if somebody who actually knows that there is." Somebody gets some proof that there was a conversation between the Ellisons and Bari Weiss, and that there was a directive to shut this down, this minor segment that had already been covered in the news because of an attempt to pacify Donald Trump. I will believe it. I will believe it. But until then, I'm going to rely on the conversations that I've had with people who actually know what's going on. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say, Brad?
No, not really. Check out my podcast, Brad versus Everyone, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also on YouTube. All right.